right, let's call to order Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission, March 12th, 2020 at 6:05.
Bill Marin.
Yo.
Joan Keith.
Here.
Gino Rossetti. Eric Volzek.
Here.
Tracy Bennett.
Here.
Bernie Grauer. Rob Lovett.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Good. All right, public hearing for Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission, consideration of adoption of 2020 Basalt Master Plan. Susan.
Okay, this is the P&Z's formal public hearing on adopting the Basalt Master Plan. I think everyone here and probably anybody that's watching on TV realizes that we've had a tremendous amount of public input as part of the process. But in terms of the official adoption, we have to have a public hearing before the P&Z before we adopt it. What we have done since the first agenda was set out is that we picked a date that's scheduled for the adoption of the plan, which is March 17th, which is next Tuesday. So at the end of this meeting, after the public hearing, we'll be continuing the public hearing and the consideration of the adoption of the plan until next Tuesday. On next Tuesday, we're having a joint meeting with the town council. Both boards will be called to order. Both boards will open the public hearing. If there's any remaining public comment, we'll take that at that time. And then we will have deliberation by both boards, and then we're scheduled to have the P&Z adopt by resolution the 2020 master plan, followed by the town council adopting the master plan by resolution. So that's the game plan. If it all works out to plan, we're kind of taking every day step by step. Tomorrow the town council's considering a resolution so that they can conduct meetings remotely, and that would include any of the town boards. So anybody in the public and that's watching should just look at our website under the news section just to see what's going to be happening with upcoming meetings. So fortunately, we'd always set up this meeting to be publicized, and so during the public hearing process, we're telling people that they can email me and that with my name and with their name and phone number, and we'll give them a call if there's something that they want to say during this public hearing. We're also encouraging people that want to provide written comment to provide it by tomorrow, the 13th, so that we can give it to the P&Z and the town council for consideration.
Is tomorrow the 13th?
Yes.
Oh, today, I was thinking today's the 18th.
So,
It says so at the top of your sheet.
Never mind.
so because this is a public hearing and it's really geared for the public, we were gonna have Dave just really kind of run us quickly through a little bit of the process. And this is really for those who are watching on TV, and then we'll open the public hearing. And actually, after Dave has his comments, we have available in the back of the room, and we have for the P&Z some suggested changes and updates, and I'll go over those in a little bit more detail after Dave gives his presentation. So Dave?
All right. So yeah, as Susan mentioned, we've planning and zoning has seen much of this before, but for the sake of the record, for the public, we'll run through some of the background of the process again. I hope everybody can see me and hear me okay, and we'll jump right into it. Staff and Susan, at any point, stop me. And Susan, I don't know if you want to talk schedule real quick just to start us off.
Just that we're here on March 12th, and we're gearing up to adopt the plan on March 17th, which is next Tuesday, and there's a couple other, options if it doesn't happen on the 17th.
Okay. This was something we presented at Open House number 4 to illustrate the process. We are at this last step. About to jump on the other side. And you can kind of look it through all the neighborhood meetings and the input and plan review. all the work sessions that we've done with you as planning and zoning commissioners, and so now we're at the last step. As we call this, our placemat for the public input process, over 5,000, really at this point, data points, a bunch of high quality data, a bunch of really cool ways that we got the word out, and I think a lot of us are really proud of this process and some of the input that we got back. These are some of the goals and methods. I think that the letstalk.basalt.net was a really, really great platform. I encourage the town to use it in the future for similar projects, but that was kind of the basis for all these other types of outreach and input that we received. All right, so the top 10 issues as presented before, really the top 3, just resolving the governance issues that came out at the beginning of the process and kind of actually did really through the process get resolved to some level. Density instead of sprawl obviously was a big one that's evident in some of the concepts that are proposed and some of the policies in the plan. Increasing affordable housing options, obviously that's a big one, came through in our projects. Our presented projects and the projects that we test with the public, these 3 things are kind of congruent and have been carried through the whole planning process and ultimately made their way into the plan. This is just to cover the plan. We'll go talk a little bit about the 3 parts. Part 1, intro. Part 2, the framework, the real kind of guiding principles behind. Part 3, the implementation plan. So this is just a little bit of the plan elements. How the plan ideas are organized, which came from the public input, turned into 8 themes. They're value-oriented based on the values of the town and the public. This is a way to organize our goals, objectives, our broad statements for how we want to do things, and ultimately the action items and the list of projects that will implement those broad statements. And we relied heavily on the strategic framework and the strategic work plan. There was 4 focus areas in that plan. See them on the side there. We kind of translated those into land use planning tenets in our themes. So we went from 4 broad, strategically focused themes to our 8 kind of planning and visionary land use planning oriented themes. Going into the goals and objectives, those present have worked pretty hard on these. With those 8 themes, we've got a number of goals. We tested all these goals with the public, and we got good feedback back. And they were circulated around to various citizen groups, and again, got good feedback back and incorporated those into the draft that's presently available today. Going to part 3, the implementation plan, kind of where the rubber meets the road. We'll go through a little bit of some of those things that have been presented and have been worked on throughout the course of the later end of this planning process. Here's our 3-mile area. It covers several miles of highway, both north and south and east and west of town. I think it's about 45,000 acres worth of space. It's a pretty big area, obviously, and we applied future land uses to that area. In West Basalt, we incorporated the eligible urban growth boundary, and we established a slightly restrained town urban growth boundary that encompasses the part of the tree farm that was approved by the county. And we incorporated some of those land uses, including changing this tree farm area to mixed-use residential to really kind of focus on what it really is, which is mixed-use residential. And really, a lot of the growth is focused within the urban growth boundary. Here you can see it within East Basalt. We don't really propose, I don't think, any significant growth outside of it. Everything is with slight adjustments here for the Forest Service property. All other growth is within that boundary. We had 9 primary and key parcels, or key and primary parcels that we focused on a little bit further, a little bit deeper. Since the beginning of the project, these were pieces that were important, pieces that really were holes in the town's fabric, and so we wanted to look at them a little deeper and look at some of the policies and some of the concepts for these areas, including Jadwin stock, which you see here. Ultimately, we came through to a land use framework for this property after some deeper thinking and some physical planning. This is ultimately where we ended up with some suggestions of rights of way for the property that linked down to Emma to the south and then connect through to, and not necessarily dead ending, but going south to connect down to Emma from the civic uses that are here, carrying on the civic ideas with this community facility, live, work, and employment opportunities, and accommodating for short-term rentals on the western edge of the property, accommodating daycare or community facility here, and then residential uses here, as it does meet criteria for proximity to transit and other things. South side, we shift kind of from early on towards work and employment focus, trying to get land uses that accommodate job growth and job creation, while understanding that there are transportation limitations in this area, and so limited growth is recommended or recognized in the plan at this point, but we have ended up at a land use framework. It looks like this, with anchored on the south end by residential and affordable housing residential. The Myers property, this is consistent with the whole future land use map. There's a portion of it inside the urban growth boundary that we are coloring as a gray, as a future thinking with Pitkin County, to really think about what this could be at this point. That's how we're ending up, and you'll notice that there is still some rural residential accommodated here, approximately 5 lots within the town boundary, but outside of the urban growth boundary.
Oh, going
So
back
we
to the
explored the
Meyer,
idea.
Dave, could you flip back to the Meyer property
Sure.
map just for a second? Just as a clarification, the study with Pitkin County will include all the acres that are in unincorporated Pitkin County also, as well as the 17 acres that are still included in the urban growth boundary that are in unincorporated Pitkin County. So you,
Instead of the laser, can you use the onboard map?
No, because he's got his screen, so it's his mouse.
Dave, go ahead to the next slide.
Okay. As we've explored with planning and zoning, some density bonus to really get to where we want to go. A lot of the themes of this master plan rely upon now, density bonuses to get what we want to get. And these are organized somewhat by the master plan themes, and then overall kind of picture of what can we do overall if it doesn't fit necessarily into our framework. There are still things that we want to do, like implement the strategic framework and implement the top 13 projects that were recognized and vetted with the public. But these are some of the things that were recognized through the public process and through the work sessions that we want to boost or allow for certain amounts of density, which is outlined in the plan for each one of our parcels of interest, our primary parcels. These are the things that we will try to push to get through density bonuses. Just as a reminder, we did a big scan of nationwide best practices and how density bonuses are used. We looked through a number of categories to get a well-rounded idea, presented these during various sessions, and ultimately came up with the bonuses, or the bonus framework and parameters that are presented in the plan for each one of our parcels that we focused on. Which this is excerpts from the master plan for Jadwin Sot, and this is how those translate into exactly kind of what would happen, and how these bonuses would be used, and just kind of as a guide of how this works in the plan. You'll see there are, for each one, or for really our 2 main parcels that we focus so hard on and work so hard on, there are a couple bullet points here. So the first one is these are the important design principles that have to happen regardless of the amount of density, and you'll see these 6 bullet points. It's got to be consistent with the neighborhood mixed density typology. We discourage large and medium lot single family residential. Consider small residential lots maybe on a portion of the site, and we prefer smaller buildings sizes at the western edge. Just these things that have to happen so that when a project comes through, you have this as your framework for decision making and for decision guidance. You also see the minimum density on this particular site and the required improvements to even get to that minimum density, and then the increased density on the right-hand column here, how far you can go. And if you go so far, there are some got-tos, and there are some incentives that one must do to achieve those densities, and that's all outlined in the plan. And so you can see some of these, and then there's some plus incentives to receive the additional, all outlined in the plan. It's very clear, it's very cogent, and kind of, there's a little bit more information obviously in the plan. This is just a paraphrase. And again, with the south side, the same thing was applied, same framework. There's a minimum density, there's some required improvements. A lot of this has to do with that transportation limitation that we've all been working on and understanding and trying to understand how to get to that point and then to increase density. And again, we've got some got-to projects, and then we have incentives to achieve the higher levels of density. Myers property was treated a little bit differently. We have more of a strategic approach to this, and there's some land use strategy language that again, paraphrase more in the plan. Take a look at it. And then there are some things that we call factors that should be addressed in the planning effort that would occur with Pickens County as a joint planning effort in the future. Susan, anything else on the Myers that you want to point out on this?
No, just to reiterate that this is envisioning a joint study with Pickens County and the town of Basalt to look at the land uses in unincorporated area of Pickens County.
Okay. This is just another reminder of the top projects from both online and in-person voting that we had established and then vetted and then brought to everybody's attention. And this is again just that our kind of top three issues that permeate throughout this plan is getting a significant affordable housing done, connecting Old Town and Willits, and then reducing greenhouse gases. And there's some parameters set there. So the next couple of slides really introduce some of the text changes that Susan mentioned earlier. I think maybe right at this point we can either stop and let Susan kind of go through some of these.
Dave, could you, before we do that, before we jump to that, could you jump to the table that had the key parcels and the numbers on it? And then work backwards.
From the tables from the plan, Susan, is that right?
Yeah, the table that just had the key parcels on it and the dwelling units. It was in the slide deck that you gave me earlier to look at.
Sure, I think I can pull that up in just a moment.
Solid.
Oh, thank you. It's okay.
I think I know it. Out here. Okay.
No, the one that had just the key parcels on it. This one. And on this table, we just wanted to point out that we clarified the asterisks here. So the one asterisk is just referring to the fact that for some of these, some of the densities, it's in addition to the existing units that are on the property. So by way of example, the number that we changed is really the enclave showed 3 units here, and we changed it to 2, and just clarified. What that does is it kind of clarifies that the Kittle River property has the potential for 3 new units. And then the asterisk, the one that was in the latest draft, the 3.6 or 3.5 of 2020, the asterisks for the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park and Meyer were kind of in the wrong place. Those 2 asterisks were just really indicating that the number of units that will be determined for that property will be part of a subsequent process. And it just really changes 1 unit on the table. But you'll see that in the other table when you look in the master plan on the next upload. So now you can go back to those language changes. So at the meeting that we had 2 days ago on the 10th, we did a handout where we indicated that we were suggesting some additional language to the text of the plan for some additional kind of clarification of what the intent was. So by way of example, this was one that and then since that time, we've worked with our town attorney on a couple other items and internally. So there's a little bit more language in the handout there's more language in the handout that I put out in front of you than I handed out on Tuesday. So you saw this on Tuesday. This is just inserting some language. It has to do with the section that says you can rearrange land uses as long as they're consistent with the goals and objectives of the plan. And this language was just giving an example of deed restricted housing and saying that because it's a highly desired use, the town P&Z and the town council can make site-specific adjustments in cases where potentially the land use designation itself wouldn't allow the use, or the density would be higher. But it's really, again, kind of focusing that we're not supporting affordable housing projects outside of the town's UGB or the Elderbell UGB. Next slide. This is just a little bit of a clarification of the AH designation. So it was just inserting language talking about their good locations for partnerships to provide affordable housing, and that the town may look for ways to increase the percentage of affordable housing and granting land use concessions. It's not requiring it, it's saying that we're gonna be looking at it in the land use process. But for the most part, I think we're envisioning that really significant increases above the code are gonna require partnerships with other entities like Habitat for Humanity or Archdiocese or the counties, additional partners. Next page, Dave. This one we talked about, summarized on Tuesday also. It's just talking about inserting language about infill, because we heard a lot of language about infill, but we really didn't have anything specific in the plan outside of the key parcels and primary parcels. Next one. This is inserting policies under annexation and regional growth, and in that section of our goals and objectives, we also talk about town code issues. So this first one is really referring to location and extent. That's when a local government, another entity is trying to do a land use application in the town of Basalt, and there's language in the state law that kind of prevents the town from, in the end, it gives that local district a lot of ability to pursue that application without going through a full, robust process in the town. So here we're speaking to any of those projects. The applicant would have to provide the town an access control plan and other documents as reasonably requested by the town to determine the impact of the development and the conformance with the master plan. And that's really what that state statute kind of refers back to, is making a finding of compliance with the master plan. 8G is a new one that you didn't see before. It's just additional language that's talking about the fact that we're encouraging annexation and into the town of Basalt for areas that are in the town's UGB, and particularly in East Basalt. It is also saying that we're not supporting upzonings without annexation, and that they should remain at their current levels of kind of approvals unless they're annexed into the town. And this last sentence is saying that except for unusual circumstances, the town does not support providing its public water service to properties or support inclusion in the Basalt Sanitation District for properties that are in the town's UGB and East Basalt without annexation to the town. So what it's really saying is places like Jadwin, we want them annexed into the town. It's trying to include stronger language to make sure that the counties aren't the reviewing entities. And then the next one is to deal with amendments to the plan. And this is something that we kind of had on our work plate all the time, is to speak more clearly about how we're envisioning amending the plan, but we really hadn't developed the language. So really we have two options, and the first one, what it's really trying to get to is trying to respect the integrity of the master plan and all of the public work that the public provided, and providing input, the input that we got from the P&Z and all the other town committees, but also acknowledging that there's times when you would want to amend the plan. And the first one is really as a result of a comprehensive study. And some of these are already mentioned in the master plan, like the PBJ, the Picken County Basalt Junction area, the Meyer area, the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park area, that we're envisioning bringing back a plan to be included as a sub-area plan. Maybe not so much for the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park, but for the Meyer property and for the PBJ area. And this is how we did other comprehensive efforts in the past, like the 2007 plan. Remember, we adopted the Parks, Open Space, and Trails plan. We adopted the Two Rivers Road master plan. We adopted the river stewardship plan was adopted as a sub-area plan. And so it's just acknowledging that that's one really good way of keeping your plan current and relevant.
Susan, this statement doesn't say anything about a similar level of public outreach that the original plan has. And like, so when we did the part of the plan that memorialized the big V, there was a significant public outreach. So I think that might be something that would, sort of honor what everyone did as part of this plan, and that one too.
Yes, I think that point is valid. Somewhere in here, we did have some language about the town planning staff will advise the town on the level of public and down to right before alternatives to this
Yeah,
section.
but I think we should say something a little more explicit than that.
Okay.
Does everyone else feel similar? Any feel differently? No? Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I think
I'll
that,
flag that.
yeah.
And then the second one has to do with the second bullet. Want to pull the next page. That one really has to do with individual map or text amendments that are being proposed on a particular property, and saying that's generally discouraged. A development proposal can request a change in conjunction with a development application. And, it's giving some guidance about ensuring that it doesn't violate the integrity of the plan. And if there is an increased number of applications, we might want to revisit the process or do a more comprehensive master plan amendment. So, and then the last paragraph just talks to the, every time you amend the plan, you need to have a public hearing. Each governing body has to have a public hearing. You have to approve it by resolution. And then the last sentence was added by the town attorney. The town should review and adopt code provisions to more comprehensively regulate the process and review criteria for amendments to the master plan. The alternative to this section was really provided by Jeff Conklin. He thought that maybe the language that we had was pretty comprehensive, and his alternative is to just do this amendment section through the code. So that's another, option of doing this. So there's pros and cons of both ways. I think, I think James kind of preferred having the language in the plan that kind of gave some general guidance about bigger and larger amendments and some guidance. But alternatively, we could put it off for a code amendment in the future, so. And we don't have to make a decision today if you guys want to think about it more or ask us to do more with it.
Does anyone have any thoughts about
It
that?
makes sense to have the detail there now. We've discussed it. It's there instead of just coming back to it in 6 months or a year.
Yeah, I feel the same.
I'm sorry, I wasn't totally following Rob.
I think it makes sense to include
The language?
the language, just since we've discussed it and we don't.
No, I think so as well. We should include that language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other thoughts?
I agree.
Okay. Except for maybe expanding a little bit more on being more robust with a public process
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
more
I
inclusive.
I think
Yeah.
that, especially, excluding like really minor updates, we shouldn't be slavish to having a big public process for every little thing, but, when we do something of like a sub-area plan or anything that substantially modifies it, I know that's vague, but,
Yeah,
you have to kind of draw a line somewhere.
okay. Okay. We, again, we're scheduling ourselves for approval on Tuesday. And we're kind of going through the document one last time, trying to make sure that we are, that we're consistent throughout. We caught another couple times where we talked about the land use designations for the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park, and we're, designating that gray. So we'll make those corrections and upload it, but they're very minor things. We'll point out more significant comments like this. So with that,
I have a question on
yep.
something you said earlier, if you're taking questions now. If I got it right, partnerships can lead to a increased density?
well, we're talking about if you're doing a significant affordable housing project.
Okay, significant affordable housing project, and then you bring in Pitkin County.
Yeah, like, let's just say you were doing a 80% affordable housing project. That language, let's go back to that language. Dave, could you go back to, it would be the second one? So there's two pieces here, okay? And you might be more interested in 59, but let's go to 62 first.
Okay, I missed the percentage of.
Percentage
affordable.
of,
All right,
yeah.
That's what I missed. I couldn't see the connection between partnerships and increased density, but it's a percentage. Got it.
Yeah, so this has to do.
Increasing the affordable housing, not the density.
Right.
Right.
Big difference.
So in this particular case, so this is just, if you look at the map, you'll see those areas with AH on them, and some of those are in town. So we don't really have the negotiating ability that we have with in-town projects as we do with annexations. So it's just acknowledging a couple things. One, that for significant increases over the town requirement, you're really looking for other partners to come in and make that work. It's also acknowledging, though, that in granting land use approvals, land use concessions, we would be looking at potentially more affordable housing than the code requires.
More percentage of affordable housing?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's the word.
But I think I know another area that you might want to focus in on. So that's what that's saying, instead of, 25% affordable housing, you might be looking at a higher percentage. And
Right.
you may be able to negotiate that, you may not be, but to really have a significant amount of affordable housing, I really think you're looking, like Habitat for Humanity, look at the number of partners that Habitat for Humanity has, look at Real America, you know, a tremendous number of
Oh.
partners.
Does the partners affect the number of units?
No, but let me circle back to the prior pun, because I think that's the one that you would be concerned about. So this is just, so in this one, let me just get my page in front of me. So I think this is a language that you might be interested in. So,
This is the language that hung up our last master plan. The exact, not exact, but very similar language to this caused the 2007 master plan not to be approved by town council.
okay, so,
The UG,
The UGB component, yeah.
okay.
but this one is saying that it has to be in the UGB. So this is what we got tripped up in 2007, we got tripped up in that the P and Z was recommending in certain circumstances you would allow affordable housing outside the UGB, and the town council was like, no, not for replacement housing, not for anything do we want to have housing outside. So that's what we got tripped up.
It had to be 100% affordable
Yes.
housing,
Yes.
and they said no.
Yes. So in this case, though, we are talking about that you have to be in the UGB. So we've solved, this language solves this one. But where this follows is, let me kind of just read the paragraph before it. The use designations on the future land use map are strongly recommended. However, site-specific adjustments may be acceptable where there is evidence of consistency with the intent of the future land use map, the goals and objectives, and other master plan policies, okay? And then this language said, by way of example, deed restricted affordable housing is highly desired by this master plan, so a site-specific adjustment may be accepted by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council in an area not designated by the future land use map for residential, or which would not permit the required density. However, generally, this plan does not support new workforce housing or affordable housing projects outside the UGB. Affordable housing projects are more desired in areas designated with the affordable housing AH designation.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, okay,
Vague enough.
Yeah,
Vague.
okay,
that gives flexibility.
Yeah.
Flexible, that's a better word than vague, yes. It's flexible enough.
Yeah, it's flexible enough that if something comes along that is highly prescient for us, we could make an exception to that.
yeah,
So, yeah.
Yep.
But we still have a mechanism to move the UGB around,
You would do it through an amendment to the plan,
yes,
so that would,
without killing the plan.
yes.
Okay, good.
By what, correct.
I see that as a minor victory, yeah.
So any other questions before we check and see if we had any public comment?
Any questions?
No.
Questions, staff? No? No? So now's the time when I open the public hearing, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's open the public hearing component of this meeting at 6:44. Any members of the public wish to speak, please?
So actually, I got an email from Tom Newland, and he is asking the question, for clarification, can amendments be made by the proponent property owner developer, or is this precluded by the language just presented? And no, it would be included, it'd be included in this second bullet. Dave, could you go to that on the amendment process? It'd be actually probably the last page. So unfortunately, and I'm sure he can see it on TV, is there a way to minimize you guys for a second so that they can see the language? Because the language is being cut off by the pictures of you.
Can you put it at the top, Dave, your picture and Lindsay's picture?
I think it's controlled on your end.
I was afraid you were gonna say that.
it's okay.
Looks like you can just minimize it.
Yeah, can you hit the little minus?
I think you have to do it on your computer, actually. It's not showing up on mine, so.
There you go.
I think it's pretty simple
Okay.
if you just
So-
hover your mouse over it.
So Tom, I don't know if you can see this full screen now, but it just says individual map or text amendments specific to a particular property, while generally discourage an applicant for a development proposal may request changes in conjunction with the development application, or if there are changes in circumstances on or around the property. Individual map or text amendments may also be initiated by town staff. The town should ensure that the site-specific change doesn't violate the integrity of the plan or enable spot zoning. If there are an increased number of applications for amendments, town staff may determine that it is appropriate to update the plan in a more comprehensive manner. So that's the language that we're proposing. And just one thing that, reading it like this, after we sent this to the attorney, we were recommending that we take out that reference to spot zoning, because this is a master plan. And sometimes, we don't want to really open up that box about some of the things that we're doing being a spot zoning, because we didn't really think it was. Is that a fair way to say that, James?
No, I agree with that. We don't want to say spot zoning. Spot zoning is such a hot button.
And so maybe what we should do is just wait. There's a delayed reaction with the filming and this, so maybe we just wait for 30 seconds more, at least. What do you think, Amy, in terms of the delay?
The delay is about 45 seconds.
Okay, so let's just, generally wait maybe until the second hand is back on the 12 before we take action on continuing the hearing.
Is that a period or comma after property in the first line?
Period.
Period.
Period, okay.
Am I away?
Because it was kind of the section
It's not a
title,
sentence.
like individual map or text amendment specific to a particular property. That was kind of like the title, the title of the first bullet was as, in the following ways, as a result of a comprehensive planning effort. So it wasn't a full, kind of trying to be a sentence. Maybe I'll underline it.
Didn't try hard enough.
Where do you put a dash after?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Semicolon.
okay.
I think
Big
we can have a
semicolon thing.
grammatical error or two in our master plan and we'll be just fine.
You never know.
Could be.
The whole thing could be thrown out.
Or misinterpreted.
I got another question. I was speaking to the master plan amendment slide, not the 3-mile plan. The 3-mile plan is our entire plan, so it does mean the East Basalt or West Basalt or a particular property. So now we'll wait.
We're good to close the,
I just asked if maybe we'll because we can also follow up if he has additional questions. I think he's probably
he's like the only one watching.
no, I think the other people are watching, but he's the only one that I got an email from.
Okay, so do we want to close the public comment?
Let's wait till it's on the 6th, and then I think we can do, can we do that?
Okay,
Clock watching.
we added more seconds.
Because there was another.
I don't know but I mean, that general writing is subpar. If the town begins seeing a lot of amendments to this plan, that's sort of vague and loose. It might be necessary to revisit the process.
Well, I actually had a number there, and I got pushed back, so, it's
And you don't know if you're gonna have more amendments. Just to kind of respond to that, we as staff kind of talked through that, and we didn't know, when you have one amendment come through, you don't know if you're gonna have more following that, so you don't really have a good gauge for a number.
Multiple amendments to this
specifically.
plan? I don't know. Just since we're killing time.
yeah. If you have suggestions,
Which
feel free to email me. And what we were kind of getting at, it's interesting, when we did the 99 plan, we didn't have any proposed amendments that I know of. No one came with proposed amendments. I think the council on the P and Z were kind of like, it was at the time, you know, it's kind of solidly behind the plan. The 2007 plan, we really haven't had any amendments except in the last few years. And we haven't had that many amendments. We had the Basalt Vista amendment, we had the proposal for Jadwin, which went down. We had the proposal for 525 Basalt Avenue that also went down, not really because of a difference between the boards or anything, but more they couldn't get HOA approval, which was required. So hopefully you don't see a lot of amendments, and that if you keep your plan current, that you don't see them. I had an unfortunate experience working in another jurisdiction where when you submitted a land use application, you submitted a amendment to the comprehensive plan, and they were all kind of running concurrently. So it's kind of an acknowledgement that really we don't really want to try to get, into this framework, because we want to honor the integrity of the plan.
Any more questions?
Nope.
All right, let's close the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Okay.
At 6:50. All right. So we are to continue this to, well, do we have any more discussion about this before we continue? Does anyone have any further discussion about this?
Rob wants to wordsmith that, but
I know you want to talk about the grammar.
I do. I'm just going to give it a C+, and then we'll leave it at that. And if you're happy with that, you'll live with it.
Okay, good. I trust them to work this out
Get my
before the
remark
approval
about
time. Eric, do you have?
no, I was giving Rob my black pen.
No opinions to ventilate?
No
Okay,
opinions.
okay. Tracy?
No.
Johnny? We're good. Okay, we need
I'll make a motion.
continue.
I'll make a motion to continue for the P and Z's consideration and public hearing on March 17th.
All right, we have a first, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? Nope, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are continued to the 17th. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We're done, right? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have first?
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're done. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.